Excellent. I think we can start. Welcome. I'm just looking for my clicker. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Lomuscio. I work at Connext. And contrary to 90% of the team, I am not an engineer. So this will not be a technical call and technical talk. It will rather be a framework for builders and innovators to understand what's the next wave of innovation and hopefully get excited about it. Right? And in order to understand what is happening, I think we need to do a snapshot of the current status of the technology of blockchain and its current limitations and how to overcome them. So we know that we started all this Web3 movement to actually remove the so-called walled gardens, right? From Web2 corporations, they were trying to limit the ways that people could use and do with their data and information. And then when that happens, when you open up those systems, you actually can create a series of projects that they can combine with each other, the so-called Lego money, right? But what is happening today is that we're seeing the innovation happening on isolated ecosystems, whether it's the Ethereum one, the Avalanche one, the Cosmos one, and so on. But these systems do not interact with each other. So the reality is that they are acting as walled gardens today. And we've seen some major protocols and projects like Aave, like Curve, and so on, deploying on different chains. But these projects today act as isolated instances, so they are siloed with each other. They don't interact with each other. We're currently using or living in a multi-chain experience, but not cross-chain. But what happens when what we're seeing with DeFi is that what happens when you are able to actually combine and interact these different projects and protocols, there's a lot of good things happened. You get extra utility and use cases. Think about a token that can be used as a collateral in another project. You actually get a new type of defensible competitive advantage where you're able to create a stack with other projects. So your project is more harder to replace because you're combining with new innovations. And you get exponential growth. So this open innovation, open composability really spins out new type of ideas and new type of things that can happen. The other big limitation that Web3 currently has is around the idea that everything needs to happen in real time. I think I need to click like maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds in advance. Yes, there it is. Everything needs to happen in real time. When you execute the transactions, everything needs to happen in the same block. The difference with Web2 is that the current development paradigm and pattern in Web2, thanks to frameworks like JavaScript, for example, is that you have asynchronous calls when you can go grab some data, fetch them, and then at a later stage decide whether you want to use them, if you want to use them. So we're still lacking this asynchronous Web3 in our current stage of the things. And the question would be, why? Why is it still the case? Turns out that the systems are, those ecosystems that we mentioned are isolated with each other, and they are secure. But in the moment that we try to connect them, that becomes the weakest link of the process. Right? Connecting these two ecosystems is what actually can make them vulnerable by attacks. In order to fully understand this, the security issues, I would first of all recommend to have a look at the great article that's been written by Arjun, the Connext co-founder. It's called the interoperability trilemma. I just added a QR code here, which may or not appear. What the article says basically is that the ideal bridge has three characteristics. One is it needs to be as trust minimized as possible. Okay? There you go. Oh, I cannot see. Okay. The article needs to be as trust minimized as possible. So the bridge or the protocol system, so the system that allows to communicate between these different chains, needs to be as trust minimized as possible. It needs to be able to move any type of data, any type of information, so be generalizable, and it needs to be extensible across different chains. Turns out it's not really possible. It's not possible to have this ideal communication protocol that checks all these points, and you can only have different trade-offs. This is a QR code if you guys are interested to have a look at the article. So if we can see some bridges that are optimizing for 2 of these endpoints, but you can never have the 3 of them. So for example, native bridges, like the ones that connect Ethereum and the layer 2s or any rollups in general, or the IBC bridge, it works very well. They are fantastic because you can pass any type of data, any type of information. They're very secure, they're very trust minimized, but they're not extensible outside their domain. So IBC works for Cosmos, and the rollup bridges works between the layer 1 and the layer 2s, for example. The issue in the current industry is that the majority, I would say most of the solutions out there have adopted the wrong trade-offs by adding a new set of trust assumptions on top of the chains that they connect. So how the majority, I would say almost all the architecture out there works is that they use a set of validators or an oracle to actually monitor what happens on one chain, come to a consensus, come to an agreement, and then execute something on another chain. What's the issue with that? Well, you're actually creating a third party that is in charge of validating these transactions that is very similar to a micro blockchain, right? You have a limited set of validators that create a new set of trust assumptions. And ultimately, the question would be, how much would it cost to attack this system? Right? What's the security mechanism? If the security is given by some limited economic incentives, that's very easy to attack. Think about a corporation. Think about a government. What's a few $100 million to attack a system like this? And if this is not a concern for you, then the question would be, why are we all doing all this? Right? As a builder, as an innovator, it's your responsibility to actually create the most secure infrastructure, the most secure paradigm that is possible. The community, your users will rely on you on choosing the best, the most secure infrastructure ever. So let me introduce you Connext and Nomad. Connext and Nomad are 2 communication protocols that have a different architecture that makes it the most trust minimized protocols that exist today. This is Connext. Connext is a cross-communication liquidity network and communication protocol that basically tries to simplify the relationship between the bridging system, the bridging, let's say, architecture, by simplifying it in 2 parties. So there is a user on one chain, and then there is a liquidity provider on the other chains that wants to, the user wants to swap tokens, let's say, for example. So what happens is that the user locks this token on one chain, the liquidity provider locks this token on the receiving chain, and only when this has happened, they both have to confirm that they see the tokens on the other chains. So only when the two parties confirm that this has happened, the tokens are released and distributed to the other party. So you can see that the 2 parties are adversarial, like they have competing interests, they don't want to lose money, so they have no incentives in line, and that's why the system is as secure, as trust minimized as the chains that we connect, because there are smart contracts that are deployed on those chains. It works kind of as a cross-chain peer-to-peer atomic swap, if you want. And the good thing is that you can not only move tokens, but also do some cold data on the receiving chain. So for example, you can have a bridge and a swap, a bridge and a deposit into a pool, all in one transaction, all in a trust minimized way. We are currently connected to more than 11 chains, Avalanche, of course, the Ethereum, layer 2s, Phantom, Polygon, Binance Smart Chain, the Polkadot ecosystem, soon the Cosmos ecosystem, with more than 1 billion in volume. The limitation of the system is that you cannot pass any type of data, right? If you remember the trilemma, we are not fully generalizable, so you cannot pass any type of data. But it's very trust minimized. As it's Nomad, Nomad has another different approach, another architecture. It's still a communication protocol that says, well, we cannot really prove that a message that is passed on another chain is valid, but we can prove if something is not valid, if a fraud has happened. It's a mechanism that takes inspiration from the optimistic rollups, if you're familiar with them. So what happens is that there is an updater or a relayer that moves a message from a chain A to chain B. But then, before the message on chain B becomes valid, there is a 30 minutes, up to 30 minutes latency period. And during this period, any watcher can come and say, hey, this is not correct, a fraud has happened. Okay, so it's an optimistic approach, which has a little bit of latency, but with the advantage that you can really pass any type of message, any type of information. So we're starting to see a little bit the comparison between the other systems. Nomad has a very trust-minimized approach, which is fully expressive, but has a little bit of delay. Connext is a fully trust-minimized approach. It's super fast and it's cheap, but it's not fully expressive. And then there is all the other solutions that promise you fantastic things, but ultimately they are a trusted one. By the way, I will recommend you, there is a Twitter Spaces, and that's been converted into a video, a YouTube channel where smart people analyze all the different security models of the different bridges, and I will recommend you to check it out. It's called Burning Bridges. My favorite episode is the one with there you go. It's the one with analyzing layer 0. So there is the founder of layer 0 over there, the founders discuss how what's the difference between a trusted solution and a trustless solution. This is the link if you want to have a look. Ultimately, again, it's about builders choosing the most secure design for a Web3 architecture, right? Being as resilient, as secure as possible for this new type of financial infrastructure. So we started to see how this Nomad and Connext, they have different trade-offs. And I think, also for you, it will become evident how they are really complementary to each other, right? One system is full expressive, but it's a little bit slower, and the other one instead is not full expressive, but very fast and very cheap. So the idea is that we can really combine these two systems and create a stack. And that's what we're doing. We are creating what we call the modular interoperability stack that is trying to overcome the trilemma, not with a single solution, but with modularity. And the advantage of this system is that all of a sudden you really have a tool that any applications can interact with that allows you to do any type of operation in a trust-minimized way, and it will either use a very fast and efficient way or a slower but fully expressive protocol to actually do what you want to do. So the modular interoperability stack seems like to allow you to really create this composability across separated ecosystem in a way that can be asynchronous if that's what you need, because now you can call a contract on another chain, change the state of the contract and the chain, bring back the call data, and then at the same time, autonomously execute the callback on the original chain, all in a trust-minimized way. And I don't know you, but when I started to realize this and I started to grasp it, I thought, well, this is kind of a big deal. So what can you build with that? Right? Now that you have this system that really changes the paradigm of what can be built on Web3, what can you actually do? Turns out you can really do a lot of stuff, right? The examples are, we just started to list some examples, but the important thing is that a bridge is just the beginning of the story, right? Moving tokens is just a first use case that we can think of. But once you understand that you can actually move data across domains, the whole game changes. And you can build, for example, a simple cross-chain apps where you allow users on your app directly to import tokens and deposit them into your pool, into your vault, all in one transaction, all in a trust-minimized way. You can have a cross-chain lending platform, for example, where you really are able to deposit assets on one chain and borrow another asset on another chain without having to bridge the tokens. You just bridge the messaging that there is a collateral on one chain. You can have a cross-chain governance tool, for example, where the tokens, if you hold tokens that are not present on the if you hold tokens that have been bridged from the original chain, today you cannot do anything with them, but now you can build a tool that allows them to vote. So if you're on a cheaper chain, you expand the democratic process by sending instructions on the original chain, and having the original app receive these instructions and act accordingly. I take the questions just at the end. We're almost done. Thank you. Other things that you can build rely on the on really the ability to pass messages around the system. I don't remember the slide that comes next, so give me a second. Anyway, let's go for other examples. Like, you are able to use this system potentially to connect different subnets that you have, because currently they are lacking a generalized messaging system, and this is a system that would allow you to actually overcome the step. You could potentially have a tool that, a new app that is deployed on one chain and acts as a central hub for all the other operations that you want to do. So you don't need to go multi-chain anymore. You can really decide that you want to do something on Avalanche, and then that applications will send instructions on the other chains, harvest the token, swap it, buy an NFTs, sell it, and then bring back the rewards if you want. Excuse me. I don't know what. What should I do? Okay, I think I go for the. Yeah, should have done it. All right. The other thing that you can do is wrap NFTs, for example. Okay, this is tricky. Okay, you can also wrap NFTs, for example, because now you have a very trust-minimized way to move also this type of tokens across chains. So you can imagine having a blue chip NFT in Ethereum. You can wrap it, bring it to Avalanche, and then fractionalize it. So then it really becomes cheap to buy a small fraction of it, and democratize the process of owning blue chip NFTs, which is something that is not possible today on other blockchains. Ultimately, what we want to do is to really empower anybody to build cross-chain applications of it. So we are giving out grants to builders and innovators that want to build this new type of applications. And I don't know if there is a way to actually change the slides here, but it's a very nice QR code that you can scan. Otherwise, go to grants.connext.network, where we are trying to incentivize all this new type of innovation. So, as a recap, what you can really do is, we had a look at the different waves of innovations that. There you go. All right. So we had a look at the at this next wave of innovation that is coming. That really, what's really required is to make these systems composable and create these Lego money ecosystems. And when that happens, a lot of good things can happen. Like you add utility and use cases to your ecosystem, to your projects. You can have a defensible competitive advantage, and you can have exponential growth. We also saw how Web3 today is not asynchronous, but that's a paradigm that developers need and require in Web2. And so this is an extra step that we can do in terms of development. We also saw that there is a reason why this is not happening today, is because the link that connects these ecosystems needs to be super secure. And there is something called the interoperability trilemma that says, well, you can't really have the perfect one. It's only about trade-offs. But the important thing is that you need to be resistant from external attacks. And today, the majority of the solutions are not. And you, as a builder, have the responsibility to actually create secure systems, because the community will rely on you to choose the best patterns. We also saw how modularity can be a way to overcome this trilemma, and the modular interoperability stack is kind of a big deal. Lastly, what can you build with this? You can actually build bridges, but also cross-chain lending platform, cross-chain governance platform, bridging NFTs, and create central hubs for your application to deploy to execute on other chains. We are really looking forward to what you guys will be able to do, and we're giving grants out of it. And that's it. My name is Massimo Lomuscio. Thank you so much. You can find out more about us on Discord, Telegram, Twitter, the whole metaverse. Yes, I'll be taking questions if anybody has one.
So you said So thank you for the talk. You said we will soon be able to send arbitrarily any data from one blockchain to the other. Mm-hmm. Do you think that we will reach a point where we will be able to send smart contracts, like the source code of a smart contract, from one chain to another and deploy it as a smart contract? So we have kind of a system that deploys smart contracts from a central chain to other chains?
Yeah, that's totally possible. In the moment that using Nomad, you can send any type of generalized message. A message can be this type of execution, this type of instructions. And we are already seeing with the ability to bring a token, a message, and then do something on the receiving chain, right? You can already execute a contract, and that instead of executing, you can actually create something new over there. So this really, yes, changes the paradigm of going from multi-chain into a cross-chain world when you can have a central operation hub and then execute everything outside.
Hi.
Hello.
Little question. When you talk about multi-chain, you're talking about EVM-based chains or anything Go? Maybe sending something from Ethereum to Solana?
Excellent question. Today, we are focused on the EVM-compatible chains because that's where it's much easier for us to deploy on a new chain. Like Connext can deploy really in half a day on a new chain. But the architecture allows us to actually go to any smart contract platforms. What we're seeing on the other side is that a lot of these non-EVM compatible chains, they're actually creating their own EVM compatible layer 2 or side chain or kind of connection system. And that's why, for example, for Cosmos, the Nomad bridge has been chosen as one of the recommended bridge to actually connect Ethereum and the Cosmos ecosystem with their through Evmos, which is an EVM compatible blockchain. So we are also seeing this trend on the other side where chains that are not EVM compatible are trying to come closer to EVM chains. And so we'll probably meet halfway. And for some of them, we'll deploy on EVM compatible bridges or EVM compatible chains that are maybe layer 2s. And for others, we'll just study the best architecture that works for them as well. Hi.
You have users and routers that swaps assets in between. How do you manage liquidity on both sides?
No, good question. So I assume you are talking about Connext because there are different models. So we have these liquidities on the different chains, and the liquidity providers today are routers, as you said. So they are kind of professional liquidity providers. They provide liquidity because they earn a fee out of the bridging. So whenever you move the assets, they take a small fee, and that's how they incentivize to actually earn money. So running a router is profitable, and the good thing is that you always swap against native assets. So with Connext, you're not minting new assets, which reduces a lot the risk for the users, and you're able to move across these liquidity pools in a very trust-minimized way. Does it answer your question?
Yes, but how do you make sure that the liquidity is not being
Oh, no. It's an open market, right? So if there is enough demand for people to go there, somebody will provide liquidity and will be present there. If it doesn't happen, we make sure that there is some kind of incentive or encouragement to actually go there.
How do you guys manage essentially chain reorgs or chains going down, like EVMOS went down? So what happened to the Ethereum assets that were bridged over, or what would happen in a future case? I know that chain just started, so it's a little bit different, but 30-minute window might not be enough for that, you know?
Yeah, so the point of an interoperability protocol and communication protocol is to be as secure as the underlying chains, right? We cannot, at the current state of the art, we cannot provide more security on what the chains actually are. Right? So if you, as a user or a protocol or a DAO, are confident in that chain, then it's okay for us to connect you with them. Right? So we're not responsible, or we cannot obviously have any impact on what happens on the underlying chain. Sorry, can you say it again?
The assets, did they get locked at that point, or EVMOS? I haven't looked much into it.
Oh, I mean, it depends on the specific case. The question is like, would the asset get locked in that case? Like with Connext, right? Because it's a smart contract. In the moment that the smart contract gets executed on both chains, then the transaction is valid, right? With Nomad, which is can have a little bit of latency. If something happens, right, there are some mechanisms to say, hey, let's actually hold the app or the applications that are interacting with the protocol in this moment because something wrong has happened. And so there are some circuit breakers mechanisms that can prevent any damage, let's say.
So you said that EVM chains take,
I can see.
back here, that it takes roughly half a day to integrate them on Connext. So what is the criteria for a chain to be connected?
At the moment, because as the lady here was suggesting, we need to have liquidity pools on the different chains, right? And at the moment, we have roughly 50 million of liquidity deployed across the network. So if we can find somebody who wants to deploy liquidity there, whether it's an existing router or a new partner, then it's very easy. Like what we tend to do is to talk to the chain itself and ask if they have any partner or any stakeholders, anybody who is willing to provide liquidity and earn yield out of it. And so once this condition is met, it's very easy for us to go there and deploy.
Thanks.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Please join us. We're hiring. We are always happy to have new projects. Honestly, these teams are generally interested in helping new projects. So if you have any ideas, just come and talk to us. We'll be happy to have a chat. Thank you.